Hello, this is Dean Radin, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
This is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hey everyone, it's Lisa Broderick, and I'm with Trey Downs on Your Superior Self.
Lisa, thank you for taking the time. You have a new book.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you have a new book that speaks about time, all the time in the world. I feel like I want to have all the time in the world right now because I love your book and I love your thought process behind it.
We can have all the time in the world. That's what it talks about. Time's an illusion. Even Einstein said that.
Time is an illusion. I know.
Time is an illusion.
It's like a technology that we created, right?
It is. I call it it's a framework for this plane of existence. We have created a framework, right? So that things can happen in a time sequence, but even that's an illusion, especially when you think about things like quantum mechanics.
The observer effect.
And others, and quantum entanglement, and the number of things which happen in which time could run just as well forward or backwards, and the equations that govern the universe. It's mind-blowing.
Well, how does a girl with an MBA from Duke start getting into quantum entanglement?
That's a story, and we all have stories. And actually, because I do this work, I hear a lot of people's stories. And a lot of things happened to us, I'd say, before around the age of 7. I was no different. And so around the age of 4, I was living in Arizona with my parents, and we had a cabin up in the mountains. And I was jumping on a bed, which rolled away, and I went through a plate glass window head first.
Oh.
And I was impaled on the window. Yeah, I know, shivers, right? My family never spoke about it. And essentially died at the scene. I mean, a doctor said she's not going to make it. We were at least 25 miles from a country facility, not even a hospital. And I remember all of this, which is not possible because I was unconscious, but something happened. And the something happened was a death experience where I remember aspects of it. I could draw it to this day. Now, I will say that memory is a funny thing, right? It grows and changes over time and gets informed by new information. But I've been pretty clear about this for about 5 decades now. So I had that experience, and I came back and was a little girl full of life, but I was different. And I realized I had a superpower, and I had a special relationship with time, in particular, slowing down time and controlling time. And so that's where it came from.
Does everyone have this gift? If we just kind of, I'm not assuming that everyone has to go through a plate glass or something of that nature, but do we have access to the gifts that you have right now?
We do. Absolutely. It's I figured it out, I believe, for theories that I have. It's about brainwave states. And I've been to a couple of brain institutes to try to prove it. As the Monroe Institute is one, BioCybernaut Institute is another, where you actually generate brain waves and they can tell you what brain waves you're generating at the time. These are flow states. Everybody has access to them. And everybody's had that experience. Did I really just see that? Did that really just happen? But people pick themselves up and dust themselves off and go on like nothing happened. That is what we don't want to do. We want to observe these, we want to make note of them, and we want to practice doing them again.
Well, man, that's so much I want to unpack in that. Well, just simply, I feel like I get into really good deep meditations, right? I think states that are associated with, I don't know, maybe theta, but I think theta is more associated with sleep states, right?
No, delta would be sleep states. Theta is a good meditation state. And then gamma and delta can slip into theta. And I showed that when I was in a brain institute with brain electrodes on. They can slip in all together and have multiple brainwave states.
All right. So theta is in deep meditation, right? What, you talked about Monroe states or Monroe Institute. I think there's a consciousness level. I think conscious level or level 15 of what he calls like all time, no time area.
Right.
Yes. Have you ever experienced that? Or I'm sure you do.
I have actually. And so I'm a meditator as well. I've been a meditator for 30 years. And so back to the story, I was, realized I had this special relationship with time, but growing up, I didn't really tell too many people. I had some weird experiences, some of which are in the book, like bowling nearly a perfect game where I couldn't not bowl a strike. getting places way too quickly than was physically possible, all these types of things. But then I became a meditator and I realized there's a relationship, there's a timelessness to meditation. And I perform Indian mantra meditation in the Transcendental Meditation philosophy. So in that state, one could sit for a very long time in meditation. Time would pass, you wouldn't necessarily know it. Or you could wake up at come out of it exactly the time that you wanted. There was a relationship there. So I took that and then I started to study brainwave states. And I realized that these flow states are available to anyone. And for people who meditate a lot, there's a brainwave state called gamma. It's a gamma brainwave state. It is known for unity experiences, consciousness, higher consciousness, samadhi in languages, where it is a complete sense of oneness with the universe. Really, really remarkable. And one time, Trey, I happened to have a brain electrodes on when I was in that state. So I know that it existed, and I've seen the brainwave patterns come out on the EEG.
What's it look like?
Let's see, the funny part is the Brain Institute thought that the electrodes were broken because all of the brainwave states they were researching were flat. And so gamma wasn't one they were catching, but not researching at the time. So in this state, they came into my room and turned the lights on, which was not good. And so I had them turn the lights off again. I went right back into the state. I will say that in front of my eyes were colors of green and blue, which actually are very often associated with this particular brainwave state and a unity experience. Green and blue, yeah. And so just in front of my eyes, even though my eyes were closed. And so the brainwave state, it looks like another brainwave state. I mean, it has amplitude, right, and frequency, but very high frequency gamma, meaning high frequency means very, very close together with a high amplitude as well.
Do you ever get like flashes of a light with your eyes closed? If you get like, I don't know, like I've been experiencing lately, like just a flash of like light, like somewhere, like I'll be sitting there mindful of my thoughts, like in the moment. Like I get to that point where you describe in the book where the thoughts are coming and then it seems like I detach from them and it turns into like more of a movie screen. And then I can silence that a little bit. And then I can feel different vibrations in it feels like brain, like is just kind of like vibrating a little bit. Like there's pressure points happening on my head, and then a flash of light or something with my eyes closed. It's kind of weird. I guess it's transitioning to different brain states. But have you ever experienced that?
I have, and flashes of light are really very common. Hearing noises inside one's head, very common as well. And so I have a theory about all of this, and that is most of the things we think of as supernatural are related to time. And here's why. So time flows as a wave, essentially. So you have a wave, as we talked about with the gamma waves, up and down in amplitude. But there's also a frequency, how frequently it happens over time. What if there's a whole world out there next to us that's slightly delayed from us or slightly ahead of us? Could we see them? No, we couldn't see them. It's called phase. And so they're out of phase with us. And so I think when we experience these things, we get into a different frame of mind, a brainwave state, a phase, where we might be able to see things that would be beyond normal sensory comprehension, but we can see them and they're out there. It's a fascinating way of thinking about all of the phenomenon that we can't really explain.
Absolutely. Well, it's trusting your feelings too, right? In meditation,
Sure.
in meditative states. Like you talk about imagination, right? Like you're using your imagination to possibly change the future, maybe. Like,
that's what I wanted to do. And I have a bit of a clinical background. I was trained as an economist, and so economists study human behavior like data. Like other scientists would study things and predict what humans will do or why they did it or what they might do. So I wanted to write down and make scientific notes about all these experiences I was having after the age of 4, when I started experiencing these strange lapses in time skipping, time slowing down, time speeding up. But when I wrote the book, I wanted to make sure that other people like me could relate to it. So beginning with every possible solution or theory that I have, I support it in science. And so what you just said, the idea that the future could change the present or the present could change the past, that's quantum mechanics.
Hmm.
That's actually well known in quantum mechanics. And so for a branch of science which is well regarded and highly studied, can we do that in our minds? I think what exists in the quantum world is actually going on for our lives. We may not be able to see it because it's tiny, right? Or control it, but the only question is when. And so that we will be able to do that. What I want to do is help people practice now, so they can do these types of things now, and then support that by science so they believe it's possible.
I think we can alter the future. Like, it's kind of like we experience time in this linear fashion, right? Just for whatever reason, it's linear and it goes, in a direction, if I'm born till I die, right? In that direction. I don't know why. Maybe it's the brain, maybe it's the way we understand consciousness. I don't know. But I feel like we just cannot, like, reading a lot of Monroe stuff. It's like, it's kind of like there's a string and there's individual pictures, right? And as you travel along that string, it's like you experience your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And when you observe in front of you, like we can't step out of line. We can't. It's the way we experience time, I feel like, just for,
Well, and so
what about
maybe time slips? What about losing time? What about deja vu? What about the Mandela effect, where people are believing something has happened and hasn't happened yet? I think that we can, if of all of the things we could manipulate about reality, time may be the easiest, number one, because everybody's experienced some weird time experience, either slowed down or losing time, or, missing time, even when you're lost in thought or holding your newborn or experiencing a kiss. So it's pretty easy to demonstrate to people that this is possible. The real trick is, how do we use that for our daily lives in ways that are reliable? And something that I want, and that is for people to have meaning and purpose. Right now, people are burned out, bummed out, overwhelmed, and hopeless for all kinds of reasons. Before we get back to business as usual after the pandemic and all that's happened, let's master time and master our lives.
well, I'm very obsessed with like changing, altering your future, right? Like changing it the way that you want, and like using your imagination, right? Using your imagination to get into a meditative state and to observe your wanted future, seeing yourself in the scene, feeling it, emotionally connecting with it. Like you talk about the observer effect. I believe that's the observer effect, us being that intelligent,
in action.
Right. The intelligent observer witnessing a future event. And then once you witness it, you manifest that, right? Now, how you get this to come to your, present moment, I'm not sure. I think it has a lot to do with the law of attraction. I think that, or maybe if you observe it, maybe it's automatically manifested. And now it's just because we live in this dense reality, maybe just because it takes a little bit longer for it to show up.
I think that's it. I call it the quantum ballet. So you want what you want, and I want what I want. There's a quantum field, there's quantum mechanics going on. And by the way, people think, oh, quantum mechanics has nothing to do with our lives. It's running computers and lasers in every aspect of our lives right now. Right. So quantum is here. We don't understand it and we can't see it. But again, I think it's only a question of when. And so for what you said, if you're doing what you're doing and I'm doing what I'm doing, it's making it dance like a ballet. We're all on the stage at the same time. But here's the question the book poses. Does how we show up for a situation in our minds affect reality? And in particular, how we perceive time? That's what I wanted to prove. And in fact, if we have time for a short exercise, we can bring all the listeners through it. It might be fun.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
So talk about your experience with the Monroe Institute. Like what got your attention to go and experience that?
Well, they have been a leading consciousness institute for how long, and also in Virginia Beach, you have the Casey Institute, you have the Monroe Institute. With this experience early on, and then becoming a meditator, I began realizing that my mind was not the sum of the neural processes, the neurochemical processes of my brain. Your brain's an organ. It has neurochemical processes. No one knows where thoughts come from, whether they go into your brain or they come out of your brain. What is consciousness? Our brains, and I knew this back then as I was doing meditation and thinking about this, our brains are the sum of the parts is much greater than just the brain's neurochemical processes. So if that was true, I wanted to study brainwaves. And the Monroe Institute has a wonderful, wonderful history of brain waves, of different experiences. They pioneered out of body way back in the 70s when Robert Monroe wrote his seminal book. And anyone can go and visit and spend time there in order to study their own brain waves, their own brain processes, consciousness, in order to learn more about themselves, and I think lead a better life.
How many programs did you do there?
One where I was in residence for a week, which is pretty intense.
So did you like walk into this? Because they say that some people some of them can't have the out of body experiences for whatever reasons, whether it's a belief system or just fear-based, anxiety. Did you experience an out of body?
Well, yes, I did. And what I wanted to do when going there was, so a death experience is an out of body experience. I'd already had one, right? There I was in the operating room, which was really not much more than a country doctor's office, looking down at myself and looking around the room. So clearly something was up. And I believe that once the brain experiences that, then it's sort of freed and can experience it again. And Monroe Institute has studied this quite extensively, where people who have had that experience, a near-death experience, is an out-of-body experience. They can experience it again, but also they experience all kinds of other things. Quite frankly, greater intelligence, greater awareness, greater emotional intelligence, greater compassion, a loss of fear of scarce resources, a loss of fear of dying. So you really live a life, as I talk about in the book, unlimited potential when you're able to experience life in that way. That's why I wanted to go.
Was it like you've had that experience, that near-death experience at 4 years old? When you went to the Monroe Institute, how did that affect you moving forward, like from that point of being an adult?
Well, I think I understood much more about it. They're extremely technical and well-versed in this. They really know what they're talking about in terms of consciousness, the brain, the body, and they have leading teachers in the world there. So to go for an in-residence program is pretty intense, I have to say. 7 days where you're learning about the brain, consciousness, as you mentioned, the levels of consciousness that they talk about. When we understand ourselves, I think that we have more power. And also understanding eliminates fear. We know things so that if you have these experiences going forward and you've studied a little bit about it, you're not going to be afraid. Having a dream where you're flying is a gift, is a wonderful gift of freed consciousness, not something that someone would be afraid of, right? And so to make sure that people have greater awareness and knowledge about the things that can happen, because it affects all areas of their life. Just greater emotional intelligence would be worth it for everyone to go.
But you experience like the non-physical realities there. Like you can't use your physical body senses to experience that, right? Like you have to build those other senses.
You do build other senses. You can't really see, out of body. And so again, in the experience when I was 4, I didn't see, I have a memory of the room and other aspects of it. I didn't see myself. I think it's very rare to see yourself out of body. I probably people have done it, and certainly the teachers there are very advanced. They may have done that, but you have to learn a different set of senses. And the truth is, where do you go when you go out of body? Back to the explanation of phase, right? I think we might go to a different, truly call it a dimension. So a dimension is how we measure things in order to pinpoint them in space and time. So if you're in a different dimension, let's say you're 6 seconds behind us or 6 seconds ahead of us, you could be out of body and things would look weird. It wouldn't look the same, and you wouldn't be here. You would disappear.
Well,
that may be what's going on.
Did you experience that through like your imagination, your third eye, your mind's eye? Is that what that because some people talk about, they see, like it took Bob Monroe, like obviously he had out of body, and then some other people have said that it took them a long time to get to that 3D visualization part of their out of body. Like for whatever reason, they were able to develop that sense for themselves. But a lot of people, I feel like they have to use their, you want to call it third eye or their mind's eye, to kind of imagination to feel that, or even like sense it.
Yeah, or some people do it naturally. So again, back to the idea that this has to do with time. The example I use is an example of waves, sound waves in particular. So there's all kinds of waves, right? There's gravity waves and electromagnetic waves and sound waves. So imagine you have two perfectly tuned flutes. One flute starts playing, it's playing a sound wave. You hear that. Now imagine a second perfectly tuned flute to it starts playing. For a moment, you would hear it, wouldn't you?
Mhm.
But then you wouldn't hear it any longer. Why? Because the waves would be in phase. They would be identical to one another in amplitude and frequency. Imagine there are people who can hear the second flute all the time, right?
Oh,
Imagine what we're talking about is the ability to sense the second flute, which may be all around us in every minute, explaining everything that we can't explain. It's fascinating to think about how something as pervasive and something we take for granted as time may really be the key to all of that.
Just like, because they talk about expanding your awareness, not your senses, your awareness to these different dimensions or different levels of consciousness.
Mhm.
And did you use HemiSync when you were there?
I have used it. I haven't really, because I was a longtime meditator, I'd already been meditating for 25 years. I didn't find that it was needed because a mantra, the ancient Indian traditions were enough of that for me. And after about 15 years of TM in the studies that Transcendental Meditation has done, your brain changes anyway. So I may have had a bit of an advantage. That said, for people who are just new to this, HemiSync is wonderful, brain entrainment works. All of these different tools really work in order to, let's say, quiet your mind from clutter, and get in brainwave states which are conducive to these experiences.
Yeah, I have to. Well, it's a tool, right? It's
It's a tool.
It's
Yeah.
a tool, and you can kind of sense yourself when you start seeing that 3D blackness and things and shapes start coming out, which it can be pretty trippy.
It can be.
But it's fun. It's fun to think about because now you're experiencing it, like this is your experience, right? Like,
Right.
don't take our word for it. Go and experience it for yourself. And that's why I love Bob Monroe, because he was
Right.
all about that. His 3 books are just so, you read them, you're like,
They're so wonderful.
just tell me what to do, man. Just tell me.
Well-
He won't do it because he wants you to have your own experience. He doesn't
Right.
want to put his beliefs on anyone.
Well, and that's very responsible of him. And at the same time, it eliminates fear to learn about these things. Imagine you had them naturally. You might be afraid. Imagine you heard things and saw things like I did as a child. I wasn't afraid because I'd already had an experience, but I could have been really afraid. But if I'd known more, especially as an adult, having gone to an institute like Monroe Institute, I would welcome it. And I do think that fear circumvents and short circuits a lot of experiences we can have.
Oh,
I'm not sure you can go out of body in fear. I'm not sure you can't slow down time in fear. There's all kinds of things that you can't do because it's a different brainwave state.
Well, you talked about it, a part in this book where you're in the house or something, and
Yeah.
the alarm was on, and you had the dogs or the pets were the animals were fine in the house, but you had this sense
Right.
of someone in your bed, like,
Yeah, I did.
like
And it was
that,
pervasive.
like I mean, that could be very paralyzing, right? Because like you just, for instance, going back to meditation, like with my using of HemiSync as a tool to get to alter states and experience possibly different levels of consciousness, like you start slipping into different levels of consciousness, you start picking up on different types of activity. Like I like, just for an example, the other night I remember floating in this void, this black void, and like you'll hear things. You'll hear, like, I've heard voices of
Yeah, I have
people,
too.
I don't know who they are. And then like I remember like for some reason in my imagination, I like, went like that to them, raising my arm, and then like a second later, my physical body's arm going like that. Like I'm like, it's incredible, but it's exciting because now you're like verifying experiences. Like you're finding out, I guess maybe not finding out, but you're accessing different levels of information. And you talk
Yeah.
about that here too, about what reality could possibly be, instead of, obviously quantum physics says that physical matter is just energy anyway, right? Like everything is energy.
Right.
What if our reality is just information bits that we're collecting through the perceiver, the antenna,
That's right.
the brain?
And which means that, and again, back to the theory behind the book about how we could control time. If that's true, then here's the theory that I came up with. Time is one part physical, because there is a physical component. And in fact, you mentioned growing, aging, and dying. That's the second law of thermodynamics, right? Entropy, where we observe things growing, aging, and dying. Therefore, time must go in a forward direction. But we're just observing it. It doesn't mean that's what's causing it, right? So there's a physical component to time, I believe. And one theory is time exists because things move around. Things are matter, no time. They're related. And that's Einstein's space-time. But there's a perception component, right? As you say. So if we can control the formula, the part of the formula we have control of, if time is one part perception and one part physical, let's control the perception part with what you're talking about. Let's learn about our perceptions. Let's learn to control them. Right now, if I drop a wine glass, I can catch it by the stem. And I know how. I don't descend into fear, and I slow down time intentionally. It takes practice. But that can be done with all areas of our life. So that we control the part we can. Yep.
You can experience it like the Matrix, where he's like slowly like dodging bullets.
Well, and in fact, in my book, a friend of mine is a police chief and tells a story about being in a gunfight in Los Angeles with slowed down bullets. Now, this is not someone given to hyperbole. This actually happened to him, like the Matrix. And I believe that when people are in danger, not feeling fear, there's a difference. There's a brainwave state of feeling danger innately, where we can go into a brainwave state of slowed down time. But if you descend into fear, then everything speeds up. So he was in this state of slowed down time in a gunfight. Many people have it in car crashes. The Don Miguel Ruiz, who so generously wrote the foreword to the book, wrote about his own experience when he was in medical school in Mexico City decades ago. And so it's very common for people to have these experiences like the Matrix that are not explainable just because your brain stops taking snapshots or your eyeball stops taking snapshots. Those are some theories. But if that's true, then why are people able to step out of the way? Do you see? So if it's only true that it's an illusion, then why was Don Miguel Ruiz able to move his body so he wasn't impaled by the steering column? And we don't know the answer to that, but I believe the answer lies in brainwave states and practicing, and the formula: time is one part physical and one part perception. Control the perception part.
I love that. I'm gonna make that I'm gonna put that on my home screen so I can remember that. Make it an alarm that I can wake up to, and remember that, because we forget. We get into fear-based beliefs, we get into everyday anxieties, and we lose perception of that moment.
Yeah, we lose all perception. And in fact, that's what happens in a very condensed sense when people descend into fear, right? It just becomes a blur. Well, when you're not there and you're in a different brainwave state, it becomes the Matrix.
Love that. I love that. The Matrix. I would love to be able to see the end result, of the 3 trilogy movies of them, coming out of the Matrix and just seeing the entire universe the way that it actually is, instead of being in the Matrix, taking that pill and seeing, not just me, right? I'm talking about everyone, everyone seeing the mechanism that we live in the society of consumerism and materialism, and just seeing how a lot of the everyday social problems that we think are problems are just illusions, even our reality, even this conversation, I'm sure we've already had this conversation a couple of times.
Well, and now we're getting to the theories of time, right? So you talked about time as, maybe going from one to another. That's the block theory of time. And I actually believe that. And that is, time exists in a sequential now occurring moments from one to the other, and they're all happening at the same time, and they're all valid and all real, and they don't go anywhere. Imagine looking down on children's blocks, and each block is a moment in time. So that's the block theory, right? Then there's the paradox theory, time, time travel. If you went back in time because you could and you killed your grandfather, would you be here now? Or are there parallel universes where you could kill your grandfather and you'd still be here, because every moment births an entirely new universe? Every moment that anybody does anything and anything happens is a new universe on a parallel course, and they're all existing at once. These are all valid theories.
I love it. I love it. I have this existing like thought like this, what Robert Monroe would call a rote, where like, you know how in his book where he had these experiences and like it was tests, and every time he passed a test or like failed a test, you would hear that click, and then the scene would come back into play, and he'd be retested until he passed it and he couldn't move on. Like, what if that is our life? Like, what if we are born and like deja vu, right? Like we have deja vu moments where maybe you're like, I've been here before. Maybe I'm passing the test now so I can proceed on with my life. Or if you fail that test and you go back to the start, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like,
well, I'm not so much into testing. I'm more into block, the block theory, going back in time. Remember what was the name of the Matthew McConaughey movie where he was stuck behind the bookcase? Interstellar, right? And so it was Interstellar. He's stuck behind the bookcase in a block, right? A block theory of time in a now moment that was different. And so he couldn't proceed to the next now moment. And so maybe we proceed because we allow ourselves to proceed. I wouldn't say that there's some benevolent or malevolent, entity out there allowing us to proceed or not. I think that's our consciousness. We're all part of that. But, another precept of science is consciousness is non-local. We're swimming in it. There's a fog, right? It's all around us. Think of the flutes playing. So there's someone next to you, slightly out of phase, out of time. And we can go from one moment to another. It's fascinating to think about. And I think it's very freeing. That's what I wanted people to not be a slave to time. Before the pandemic, people were wearing busyness as a badge of honor. I know, I'm a New Yorker. That is not healthy. To live, to have the meaning in your life be how busy you are, and then have it suddenly stop and you have no more meaning. Meaning and purpose come from within. This is a way to get that back for people so they can lead lives of fulfillment and their best possible lives.
We talked about playing the flute. Who is playing that flute?
Yeah, well, that is a very good question. So you think about the universe, right? And I think about it a lot, the amazing complexity, and there's time and there's matter and there's dimensions and there's all these other things happening, and the things we know and we don't know. And there's the spiritual side. What is that? Is it science? Is it spirituality? It is beyond a reality which we can know. I believe it has to do with quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics will bubble up until it's part of our everyday life and we can actually be part of it and control it.
Did you ever experience what Robert Monroe called the I there when you were there, when you were at the Institute?
The
I there.
Refresh my memory.
So the I there is the collection of what you are, right? Like, so he had this, we didn't really explain it in his first book, but his second book, he talked about where he visited. It's like everything that he's ever been, every life, every piece of awareness, it's a collection, like a mass. It's almost like, right. It's like, almost think about an octopus, and like the tentacles are all of his individual lifetimes.
Right.
And when he came out of body, he went back to the I there, and where he describes this field of like flowers, but the flowers had faces, and the faces were everything that he's ever been in this world. And they were all an aspect of him. And then that's his third book. I'm not going to ruin it for you if you haven't read it, but he brings it all home with the I there. And
well, so I would say a different thing. And that is because if time is a block universe, let's say we're going from moment to moment and there is really only the now. This is what I do. And I take people through this exercise where imagine you're here and you're sitting at your desk and you're doing all kinds of things. And then I shock people into the realization by saying these words: everything is you, not you are everything. Everything is you. So if you hold that thought in your mind, you realize the desk is you. You're stardust. So if you really hold that, you can have a unity experience, much like Robert Monroe's, but in this present moment, which I'm a little bit more of a fan of.
With transcendental meditation, are you using like words to kind of get you into these deeper levels of meditation, or like
Well,
chants?
yeah, well, transcendental meditation is an ancient Indian practice. Well, it is based on ancient Indian mantra meditation. It uses words in Sanskrit. And so Sanskrit is a source language. A source language means, and there are a couple of them around, where the word is the thing. In English, the word is not the thing. It's been changed and, and manipulated and combined over time. Sanskrit was not that way. So they have words for things which are actual vibrations. And of course, India is about vibration, frequency and vibration. So you are given a mantra, which is a Sanskrit word, usually the name of a god. But a god was just the humanization, the anthropomorphizing of a vibration or an aspect of humanity. So you're given this word, like Kriya or Shiva or some words like that, Sanskrit words, and you're taught to repeat that over and over in your mind's voice, and it's very hypnotic. And I talk about this in the book. I call it focused perception. In hypnotherapy, I ran into a hypnotherapist after I'd finished the book who told me that there's a word in hypnotherapy called focused awareness, which is when you focus on something to the exclusion of all other things, your brain entrains. Very similar to Monroe Institute brain entrainment, right? And so a mantra does that using a Sanskrit word that has a vibration. And it was chosen for you based on basically the age you are when you learn to meditate. I mean, that's a secret that's not a secret anymore because of the internet. So you're given this word and you repeat it over and over. It was an ancient form of, hemisync, basically. And you get very used to it. After a while, if you're a longtime meditator, you don't need it anymore. I could think of it once and then be in the same brainwave state as though I thought about it, done this for hours or, even longer. But it's a form of of training your brain to get into a certain brainwave state that's conducive for an aspect really of self-hypnosis. You're in a very suggestible state when you're in these things. The real question is, when you're in that state, what can you do with it? And the answer is you can have a lot of fun. You can suggest to yourself, which is what the book is about.
Yeah, I want to do the imagination stuff, like the future stuff. I love that.
Awesome. You want to do an exercise?
Yes.
All right, let's do a quick exercise.
Do it.
All right. Now, I will say, as I mentioned to you before, I work in public safety I run a charity in policing and police reform. And so I will say, if you're driving, do not attempt this while driving. You cannot close your eyes and you cannot sit comfortably while driving. What I want you to do is, if you're driving, you can take this exercise home, or it's on my website and you can download it under bonuses. But for everybody else, if you can be comfortable, so let's all sit comfortably and close our eyes. You can sit comfortably, and I'll give you a little banter, a little background, which should help you be even more relaxed. And that is, I've actually done this exercise with brain electrodes on my head to determine whether lotus position or another position was more conducive. And basically, there are two good positions. There's lotus position, right? Lotus, where you're sitting at, basically you look like a tetrahedron, a triangle, three-dimensional triangle. But there's also straight arms, straight legs. And if you're sitting, that would be like sitting like King Tut. And that is a tradition from India and China, from China and from Kabbalah, which is ancient Judaism. So either way, if you're sitting in a chair, you can sit with your feet on the floor and your back straight, pick your shoulders up and roll them back. We're going to sit comfortably, and then let's close our eyes. And we're going to focus on our breath here, because that's very common for meditation, right? But we're going to do a special type of breathing where we inhale through our nose, a regular inhalation, but exhale through your mouth, a long, slow exhalation, twice as long. Inhale through your nose regularly and exhale out your mouth, twice as long, seeing the air that leaves your mouth as white smoke. And in through your nose, out through your mouth, twice as long. And see the number 3 appear in your mind's eye, any way that's good for you. People say they can't visualize. Everyone can daydream. In any way that you could imagine a 3, in through your nose and out through your mouth. See the number 3 dissolve into the number 2. And in through your nose, out through your mouth, a long, slow exhalation. The number 2 dissolves into the number 1. In through your nose and out through your mouth, the number 1 dissolves into the number 0. We are in the time of no time. My teacher, Jerry Epstein in New York, used to say that this was the time when miracles happen. You're now in the now. You're relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your brain is becoming entrained to the sound of my voice. You're breathing. So we'll sit quietly for a moment, and then we'll have some fun. Now, bring to mind something that you would really like to create for yourself. Something satisfying and fulfilling. It could be something mundane like the check comes, or you get a job, or the apartment is available, or something profound like world peace. I think about peace in America all the time, and I use this exercise for that. So bringing to mind something you would really like for yourself, and live it as a movie viscerally, where you're seeing it, you're feeling it, you're hearing it, sensing it as though you're right up there on the movie screen. It's all around you. Living this wonderful movie of this something you want to experience. Now let's do something special. Think to yourself about how all of the ways exist where it benefits others, where it's not about you. It's for the benefit of all, the benefit of everyone involved. It's a detriment to no one. Whatever it is, the check coming, the apartment, the job, world peace, it's a benefit to everybody. People ask me why I suggest this, and the reason is it removes the fear that it won't happen for you. That's one good reason. A second reason is the universe, such as it is, as a sentient being, may really dig the fact that you care about so many other people and it's not about you. So all of the other ways that people benefit, let's hold that in our mind. Now we're living this as a movie again, really viscerally, see, feel, hear, sense, and know this is happening. Now it just happened. Live the moment. It's done. It's complete, accomplished, fully and completely. There is nothing more to do. Whatever you wanted has already happened. Hold this feeling in your mind. Hold it. Imagine what that's like, the relief, the sensation. You've wanted this to happen. You were thinking about it and living it as a movie, and it just happened, right? Now, don't ponder the details. Our brains go into high level operation now, trying to figure it out. The details don't matter. Who, what, when, where, why, how, doesn't matter. It's not your job. It's already done. It's complete. Nothing more to do. Now let's amplify this feeling in our bodies, right? Every cell of your body is vibrating with the relief, the sensation that what you want to have happened is already done. It's complete, fulfilled. Nothing more to do. Filling your body and feeling your body going out the bottom of your feet down into the earth. Fill up the entire earth. Every cell of the earth is now filling up with the vibration that there is nothing more to do. All of it, the entire earth is now filled. Have it come back up through your feet and right up your spine and out the top of your head in every direction, going up, 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 up. Nothing more to do. It is going through the building where you are, through the galaxy, into the universe, and then you can just let it go. Just feel your body relaxing. The relief, completion, fulfillment, accomplishment, the feeling that there is nothing more to do. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
Wow.
What fun that was, right?
That is
Now,
amazing.
let's talk about the science of that. So the book addresses this question: does how we show up in the moment affect our physical reality? That is a precept from quantum mechanics, right? The observer effect. We don't know how that works in our life, but is how you are going to show up to that moment going to be different? Because you've just done this? Yeah, it's already done. It's complete. You're not going to worry about it. You figured out all the ways that it benefits everybody. When that phone rings and it's about the job or the check or whatever, you'll be different. Does it contribute? I think so. Do we know exactly how? Not yet. So that's number one, right? Number two, you've removed all fear that it won't happen. All fear. And number three, even if it's just a coping mechanism, are you leading your best possible lives? Right? Because we're living an experience of something we really wanted to have happen for the benefit of all. The answer is yes. So do we know how this might work? No. Is it likely to affect future events, if for no other reason than the choices you make based on the fact that you've already lived it? Absolutely. Could it have a real effect in terms of a visceral, physical-based effect on time? I think so.
I love all of that. I think it's so important that we tap back into that inner technology, right? We're so obsessed with technology, external technology, going to Mars and investing in Bitcoin and all of these worldly desires. But I think we miss the mark when we don't invest in the inner technology.
Right. So in some sense, we in our awareness, each of us is all there is. You know, as we did the exercise before that I often do, everything is you. So what does that mean about all this technology? It is you, you know, it could be used. But if that's true, you're in the driver's seat. And so let's get in the driver's seat and practice some of these things. That exercise, by the way, Trey, can also be used for people who are afraid of things. So I don't do it usually when I'm working with audiences because it's a little bit of a downer, or it could be. But live the same exercise where instead of living the thing you want to have happen, you live the thing you don't want to have happen, right? The thing you're afraid of. And then you get to the point and you live it, and it's visceral, and every aspect of it as awful as it could possibly be. And then it didn't happen. Live it. Live the fact that it did not happen.
Can you go back and change it?
Well, and so that's back to quantum mechanics, right? Theories about time travel and the future affecting the present, and the present affecting the past are well known in quantum mechanics, right? The science supports that. And there are many experiments have been done. One is called the quantum eraser, where they actually do the delayed choice experiment, right? The double slit experiment for the observer effect. But the observer observes what's happening at a different time. And they wondered if the outcome would be the same as though it had been observed. And the answer was it was. So imagine people are familiar with the double slit experiment. You're shooting a photon from a light source through slits onto a photoelectric plate. If it is not observed, it's a wave, and it's observed, it's a particle, right? Particles and waves. So imagine that it's shot and no one observes it. And then someone comes back later and observes it. Does it change from a wave to a particle? The answer is, in the delayed choice experiment, it does. Right. So those photons have already hit the photoelectric plate, but then the observer was later. So that's the quantum eraser, the delayed choice experiment.
Ooh, man.
Now, I know it's a mind bender, right?
Mind bender. Everyone pick up her book, All the Time in the World. Learn to control your experience of time to live a life without limitations. I cannot suggest this book any more than I am right now, because this is such a great read. Lisa, thank you so much for joining. How can people connect with you?
On the internet, lisabroderick.com, and all social media. And again, the exercise that we just did is on my website, lisabroderick.com, for you to download. You can listen to it at night, listen to it early in the morning, and create the life you want to lead, a life without limitations.
Without limitations. Lisa, thank you so much for joining.
Trey, thank you again.